Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Taking Out the Trash on My Way Out. This story happened almost 20 years ago. I had been a truck driver for years, and in an effort to raise a family and actually have a home life, I decided to take my skills to work for a garbage company. The company I started working for a huge one in the US. It came with decent pay, great benefits, and the perfect work schedule. Their equipment was substandard, but I didn't care much. The employees at the company, however, were voting on unionizing the location in response to the complaints about management. I really didn't care either way because I was so new that I had zero complaints. Immediately after the contract vote, the operations manager confronted me about why I voted to accept the union contract, and stated he knew I did because only 3 people voted not to, and he knew who they were. I just walked away from the conflict and focused on doing my job to the best of my abilities. I worked hard and would even work as I was eating my lunch on a daily basis, and pushed myself to excel at being efficient at everything I did for them. I came to work sick several times when I should just called in sick, and covered many shifts when others called in themselves. One would have thought an employer would appreciate people that are so devoted to their job. In fact, many of the employees there worked just as hard as I did. This employer, however, automatically deducted 30 minutes of time for lunch from each employee, but would actually harass employees that actually took their lunch break. They would push employees to perform more and more each day so that drivers were actually speeding to keep from being written up. Supervisors and managers never commended good performance, and would actually make comments such as, "If you don't like it here, McDonald's is hiring," and "There is always someone else waiting to take your job tomorrow," because drivers are a dime a dozen. Vehicles were not properly maintained when it came to comfort. Equipment such as air conditioning never worked. It was no wonder the employees had decided to unionize. This went on for a couple of years before I found myself a target of such treatment. They started pushing me to drive faster, and I refused. They daily came and tried to threaten me with disciplinary action if I didn't improve my performance that I knew was already beyond what I was required to do. One day I finally had enough and told my supervisor, "I only have 2 speeds. If you don't like this one, you sure as hell aren't going to like the other." He replied, "What is that supposed to mean?" I then stated, "Keep pushing and you will find out." He did, so I showed him what that meant. I started driving the speed limit everywhere I went, did only what I had to, and noted down each and every delay I faced, for months. I took every lunch, and every break I was entitled to, once even sitting with an office employee at a table right outside the general manager's window as she shared food he had provided to office personnel. I knew this upset them. Finally one day they called me into the office and started yelling at me. I informed them that I wanted my shop steward to be present for the meeting. They reluctantly agreed and then proceeded to pull out a stack of my logs out from files to go through during the meeting, in an effort to fire me. When my shop steward arrived and the meeting started, they went through log after log for about an hour before finally conceding that I had done nothing wrong. The meeting ended with them asking me not to share its outcome with anyone else. I just smiled and walked out. As I walked down the stairs from the manager's office, a crowd of employees stood waiting to see the outcome. When they saw my smile, the crowd broke into laughter. I returned to my job and resumed my routine of working hard, but continued to take my lunch breaks. Within a week, as I inspected my vehicle, I noticed it was suddenly equipped with a GPS device. This was at a time when such devices were just hitting the market, so I knew the harassment was far from over, but I never allowed the opportunity for them to find fault. Before long, my regular truck was regularly taken out of service for repairs, and the replacement I was then assigned to was a rusty old death trap. I started to appeal to the union for assistance, but was told there was little they could do since it didn't violate the union contract. I decided I would start looking for other employment, but not before enacting my revenge. For the previous couple of years, the company had assigned me to drive loads of trash to a landfill in the next county, because the disposal fee was much cheaper. When they first instructed me to do so, my supervisor told me not to tell landfill employees in our county what we were doing because it was a breach of their contract with the county we worked in. However, since they were now harassing me into quitting, I made it a point to be less than subtle that I was routinely disappearing for long intervals. When a county employee started asking where I had been, I sheepishly replied, "Oh, just over at XYZ County." He replied, "You aren't supposed to go there." I answered, "Really?" He then made it a habit of asking where I had been whenever I would disappear for prolonged periods of time. Each time I would reply, "Oh, I'm not supposed to say." This went on for months as management continued to push me toward quitting. Finally the day arrived, and I walked off the job and quickly found work elsewhere. A few months later I picked up the local newspaper to find a front-page article about how the company had violated the county contract and was being sued. A later article read that lawsuit ended with a settlement of more than $800,000 being paid to the county. I found out from employees still working there that the corporate office terminated all of the managers as a result. I sometimes miss the co-workers I once had, and miss the job itself, but it was justice enough to take the trash out as I left. I was regarded as somewhat of a hero after that by those left behind. As for the immediate supervisor that directly harassed me each day, he kept his job when new management came on board. However, he insisted that he deserved a raise, and stated that he would have to quit if he didn't receive one. The new GM told him that he would need the request in writing in order to try to negotiate with the corporation. When he handed the GM the ultimatum, the GM replied, "I will take this as your letter of resignation." The next one is titled, "Descriptions are okay as long as they're true." I work in a department store. I've only been here since COVID struck, so about 6 months at most. I now know a good amount of the people I work with, but with seasonal hiring, that's about 60 new faces to remember. With that said, I am 30 male, and I shave my head because I like the way it looks with my beard. Last week, a new girl asked to borrow my key for the compactor. No problem, just bring it back when you're done. Well, the new girl couldn't find me I guess, so she gave the key to a supervisor and said, "It belongs to the old, bald dude." My supervisor didn't know who she meant, so she had to look up my key number to find out she meant me. So upon returning my key, supervisor tells me, "Yeah." She said just return it to the old bald dude. To which I replied, "That's kind of rude, don't you think?" She told me, she was just being descriptive, it's okay. Fine. This morning, the same girl who borrowed my key, left her scanning device over in my area. My supervisor comes over and says, "Whose device is this?" To which I replied, "The young blonde with big boobs." Cue the audible gasp, and me saying, "What?" It's just a description, so it's okay. There was nothing she could say to me, because I used her words verbatim. Later this afternoon, we had a small team huddle to talk about calling people only by their names. The next one is titled, "Fire my boss over something ridiculous. Pay my unemployment benefits." This took place more than a decade ago. I started working for a small branch of a company and got along really well with my boss, the branch manager, and used to compare him to Michael Scott, not to his face. I would have been Jim Halpert in this scenario. After working there for a while, my boss was approached with an awesome offer to go manage a bigger branch a few hours away. This was because the owner wanted to place his son as the branch manager of a small location and needed to vacate a position to do so. My boss graciously turned down the offer. His kids had just started at their new schools, and he didn't want to uproot them again. He'd relocated to take the current position. This was not taken well by our corporate office, but they couldn't fire him for it, not directly. A few weeks later, I saw our office manager, a lady nobody in the office liked, in my boss's office filing paperwork, or so it seemed, which was odd but not alarming. The next week, my boss was going to be on vacation, and all the office staff had to attend a meeting for non-salaried employees at the corporate headquarters. While we were at the corporate thing, our office manager handed out new office keys to all of us three that were there. My boss was on vacation and salaried. I asked, "Why are we getting new keys?" and she said it was because someone lost theirs. None of us had lost our keys, we were all sitting together and could easily confirm this, so I texted my boss to ask him, and he had no clue what she was up to. I got a bad feeling about what was happening. I called him after the meeting and told him to come by my house Sunday when he got back from out of town. I explained that I was 95% certain they were planning to fire him Monday. I didn't know what reason, I just had a gut feeling. I said it was too bad because if he was fired, I wouldn't want to work there anymore knowing that they would do shady stuff like that. He, jokingly, said that he should fire me first, so I could go on unemployment. I laughed and told him that he should write me a termination notice, and then if he doesn't get fired on Monday, it would be just between us. But if he does get fired, I could take it to the unemployment office and have proof that I was fired for something that would make me eligible for benefits. So, we did, and he was fired Monday for misfiling paperwork of some sort, and I definitely did not go back to work. They tried calling me in, and I told them that my boss had fired me already. I took the proof with me to the unemployment office and was good to go, until they, former employer, disputed my claim. I had a hearing, on the phone, with the unemployment office and my corporate HR person, HR, he wasn't fired. The paperwork he submitted with his claim isn't the right paperwork. It should have come from HR, not his manager. Unemployment, why did the manager not do that then? Where is he? HR, he no longer works for the company. Unemployment, why did he leave? HR, he was fired. Unemployment, why was he fired? Getting exasperated, HR mumbles, for doing paperwork incorrectly. Unemployment, well, that is hardly the fault of the terminated employee. How is he to know that the paperwork is invalid that is coming from their supervisor? They told my HR that they could rehire me or not, but my claim was valid. They couldn't rehire me because they'd already filled the position. So, I got to collect unemployment for a while before moving on to my next job. My former boss is doing well now it seems, and I don't feel bad at all. For the record, it is very likely that they would have invented a way of firing me after they got rid of my boss. Had they done that, they would have made certain that my termination was such and that I wouldn't be eligible for unemployment. I took that power away from them by getting fired preemptively. I am also positive that when I saw the office manager in his office while he was away, she was arranging the setup for him to be fired. The next one is titled, Girlfriend Stole from My Bank Account, So I Strike Back Hard. I'm a senior at a large state university. This happened in the first semester of my freshman year. I was selected for an honors-type program that placed me in a co-ed dorm building with every other student in the program. As a dumb freshman, I rushed into a relationship with a freshman girl who lived right above me. We'll call her Megan. It was convenient for me to date someone who lived so close, but everyone else in our building hated Megan because she talked a lot and almost exclusively about herself. She bragged often about being a fairly aggressive person, but somehow, I overlooked that mile-wide red flag. Right after Thanksgiving break at the end of an evening class, I got a call from my mum, who noticed some unusual activity on my checking account. Back then, I had no credit card, so this account debit card was my only access to my savings while I lived on campus. I rarely needed to buy anything during the semester, so I was puzzled to find that $104.29 had left my bank account over 2 weeks, in the form of 6 Grubhub food orders. At this point, I trusted Megan, but I decided to ask her about the money right away. She denied any involvement and suggested that I cancel my debit card. After a really long phone call to the bank, I did just that. Next, I reached out to Grubhub customer service on Twitter. Hey, my card was stolen and used for food orders on these dates. Can I have the receipts? They sent me the first and last receipts, but they had to redact the personal info of the account holder. I say redact in quotes because they just used the Snapchat draw tool, and Megan's name was still clearly visible on both receipts. What's more, the most recent receipt was only 2 hours old. She was probably still eating when I chopped up my debit card. It's worth noting that she and I both had unlimited dining plans, paid for by our respective parents, and we lived 500 feet from the nearest dining hall. She didn't need to order food, and she definitely didn't need my money to do it. So, I texted her again. I have the receipts from Grubhub. Are you sure you didn't make those orders? Her reply, duck you for suspecting me. Fairly aggressive, wouldn't you say? I hatched a plan to collect security camera footage of her picking up the order from that evening. However, by midnight, Megan arrived at my door in tears and confessed to everything, plus she admitted to being a serial shoplifter. Exhausted, I sent her away and decided to deal with everything in the morning. By the next day, everyone in our building seemed to know what was going down, probably because Megan had already begun broadcasting her version of the story. I sent Megan a breakup text and decided that the $104.29 was a loss. At least I escaped unscathed, right? Well, less than 2 days later, she entered my room when I wasn't looking. I was sitting at my desk when I noticed her standing silently behind me. "Megan, give me my stuff." "Where's my stuff?" "Me, what stuff?" "Megan, you know." I did not know. She tore through the room, looking for something that she refused to identify. Just as quick as she came, she was gone, and I locked the door because obviously this wasn't over yet. Within a minute, she was back. She stood outside my door, knocking and demanding I let her back inside. The knocking quickly got more violent. She started shouting, "I know you're ducking in there," and opened the mother ducking door. Mind that we lived in this building with students in our program who all know each other, and all of them could hear her. Pretty quickly, Megan was rattling the handle of my door. Next, she began throwing herself at it, shoulder first, trying to break it down. I lived next door to my RA, but judging by the lack of any intervention, he was elsewhere. So, I whipped out my phone and texted him to send backup. Meanwhile, I saw my heavy wooden door bending and buckling. I even heard it crack a bit. My RA was on duty in another building, so he sent 3 of his colleagues to de-escalate the situation. They brought Megan downstairs, where she revealed that the stuff she wanted was just the t-shirt and keychain that she gave me for my birthday. Whatever, I let her have those. I still just wanted this to be over. However, once I shared my story with the resident life staff, they filed university paperwork to place a no-contact order between me and Megan. They also recommended I contact the campus police, who then told me I should get my stolen money back in small claims court. I couldn't even get there without a car or money to pay for an Uber. Sorry, Judge Judy. At the request of the campus police, I also contacted the Title IX office at my school, sending them the story of everything you've read so far. They were interested, to say the least, although I didn't want any trouble. I just wanted a clean breakup and a fresh start, but a Title IX representative informed me that they were bringing 3 misconduct charges against Megan: theft, threatening, violent behavior, and inciting an intervention by university staff. The representative asked me to serve as a witness in Megan's disciplinary hearing the next semester. I tentatively agreed, right before the representative set the hearing date for February 14th. Valentine's Day. I thought it was a joke, but they really did that. When the day of the hearing finally arrived, the no-contact order was still in effect, but a few of my friends had kept tabs on Megan. For starters, she failed all of her classes in the fall. Someone in my math course confessed that Megan had tried to sleep with him while she was dating me, and he had to repeatedly tell her no. Even worse, Megan kept telling a twisted version of the whole story to try and turn my friends against me. So, when I found out that she had found a new boyfriend, it felt good to know that the V-Day disciplinary hearing ruined whatever evening plans they might have made. I arrived alone at the disciplinary board office, unsure of what to expect. The board consisted of grad students, and the hearing was expected to run into the night. Unlike me, Megan did not come alone. She brought both of her parents as character witnesses. That wasn't even a thing here. This wasn't a real courtroom, as you'll soon see. And that's not all. Megan's parents also paid a lawyer to defend her against the charges. The board knew that was unnecessary, but Megan's parents believed so strongly in their daughter's innocence that they had already paid this 3-piece suit to make her case. In the name of fairness, the board members offered me pro bono legal representation, a junior economics major, who we'll call Jimmy. Jimmy had already read my account of the events from the fall, and thanks to my screenshots of Grubhub receipts, he said there was an okay shot of the charges sticking. Then I told him something I'd kept secret for months. When Megan tried to break down my door, and I whipped out my phone to text my RA, I also filmed the whole thing. Jimmy couldn't get enough of the video. There was Megan, kicking and screaming and clearly trying to break into my dorm room. It was all the evidence I needed, and no one saw it coming. In the hearing, when the time came for me to make the case against Megan, Jimmy played the video on a big screen in front of everyone. The room went insane. In that instant, I realized that Megan really had convinced everyone I was the liar. In her version of the story, I gave her permission to buy food using my account. She told her parents that she'd asked me politely for her belongings, which I'd rudely hidden from her in my dorm room. In Megan's story, I was the sociopath trying to ruin her reputation. Before I unveiled the video, it was her word against mine. I still didn't want revenge, even after finding out that Megan tried to cheat on me. But when I saw her parents flipping out at the video, "Why didn't you tell us you did this?" and her lawyer raising hell, this evidence was not provided in pre-trial disclosure, and a board member standing over him, "Sir, this is not a court of law. Please return to your seat," and him shouting, "Objection," and her replying, "We don't have objections, this isn't a court of law," and Jimmy, my new best friend, just trying not to laugh out loud. That's when I realized how good revenge can feel when it's fair and deserved. The board found Megan responsible for all 3 charges. My side of the bench recommended the university terminate her housing contract and force her to pay restitution. Her side recommended only restitution and a reprimand. The board compromised. Her family paid back most of the money she stole, because 2 of the 6 orders had the same price, and the lawyer convinced the board I had duplicated an order, and Megan was forced to move into a different dorm building. This probably would have helped her anyway because every student in our program's building knew everything she'd done and lied about. They wouldn't speak to her, and no one wanted to be her roommate. By the time she had to move buildings, she'd already failed all of her courses again. Having paid for her tuition, her unused dining plan, her lawyer, and her restitution, Megan's parents finally pulled her out of school. Where are they now? Last I heard, Megan returned as a part-time student, but I never saw her again because the no-contact order still stands. I'm now Facebook friends with the guy Megan tried to seduce. Oh, and Jimmy and I connected on LinkedIn. As for me, well, I no longer date fairly aggressive people. The last one is titled, "Have Fun with That IKEA Furniture." I moved into a shared apartment pre-COVID and never met the guy whose room I was taking over. But he was also selling his bed, so we texted back and forth to settle on a price, etc. I asked if it came with the bedding, since I'd just moved to a new country and had nothing like that. He said it did. So when I move in I realize, the only thing on the bed is this ratty old blanket that looks more like a Christmas tree skirt, and 2 pillows to match. The kind you can't even really wash, and are like a fake silky kind of material. It had tassels. Not warm, not comfortable, not clean, and definitely not usable. Not even so much as a fitted sheet left behind. It was like he went to the Salvation Army and picked up the cheapest bedding he could find. I texted him about it and he said something along the lines of, "Well, I said the bed was new, I didn't say the bedding was." Anyway, what the duck. I couldn't sleep there the first night and went back to my hostel and bought my own bedding the next day. But Buddy left an UN-built IKEA desk in the corner of the room and said his girlfriend was coming to pick it up sometime during the week. It wasn't in a box, just bundled up and held together with some masking tape, so it wasn't brand new. I stared at it for days before I decided to actually do it. But I was still so salty about the disgusting bedding that I then also had to deal with getting rid of. So I took out 2 key pieces of the desk. Not like a full leg, but not a small easily replaceable screw either. I don't know exactly which structural pieces they were, but I feel confident that he couldn't have built it properly without them. I had to wait until my other roommates were out to go toss them in a bin down the street so they wouldn't be able to trace it back to me if the old flatmate asked. Anyway, the girlfriend came to pick it up and I never heard from the guy again. I like to think he couldn't use the desk and knew it was me but couldn't prove it and knew he'd been a dick about the bedding, so he had to let it go. By which. Thanks for listening.